I had no plans on being a mixed martial artist. I remember everyone said Chris Lehman has the chin of like a brick wall,
This is a legit contender.
All right, we're going to test this out. I broke my hand, broke my right hand. I hit him so hard, he ain't going nowhere. When the end of the second round, and the referee comes out and waves off the fight, and he quits on the stool. He said, no mas.
So, what would you say was your biggest loss of your career?
Go for overhand right, and he just blocks and throws an elbow. He gives me this gash right here. Knocks me out with an elbow. That was probably the worst I've ever gotten knocked out. So doing all this, but I wasn't being a good dad. I wasn't being a good husband because I was never home. And I was on the verge of becoming a world champ. I was ranked top 3 in the world. And I was like knocking on the door. But when my son said that, I was like, I'm done.
The Patina'd Podcast is about the earned wisdom found in pain. It's about chasing failure, catching it, and using that as an opportunity. It's about scar tissue and sinew. It's about stretch marks and dented fenders and refusing to hide them. It's about pushing our insecurities and shame to the forefront instead of behind us. Instead of seeing rust as something that compromises a structure's integrity, we choose to see it as the grit that builds character. This is the Patina'd Podcast. Okay. All right. So here we go. Take 2, Mark. Let's do it.
That's right.
So behind the scenes, for those listening or watching, this is our second attempt at this. And so this is a show about resilience, and we're both two resilient people. So we're going to try to make our way through this.
Yeah.
And the benefit of doing this second take is I don't feel as nervous as I did yesterday interviewing somebody that I've looked up to for years, who I haven't known personally, but I've watched their fight for years. So let me go through this intro, Mark, and then we'll get straight into it. So,
Right. Sounds good.
Mark the Filipino Wrecking Machine Munoz. He's a very accomplished athlete in wrestling and MMA. So he has a 2001 NCAA national championship at the 197-pound division. He's a MMA fighter with 14-6 record. He went from WEC over to the UFC, and he had 6 violent knockouts. He's also a father, a husband, anti-bullying advocate. And when I was trying to think about an intro for you and like how I viewed you, watching you during your career and listening to other fighters talk about you, specifically Michael Bisping having like these glowing words about you, and Michael Bisping during his fighting career didn't have glowing words about anybody.
Yeah.
And so my understanding of the biblical definition of meek comes up for me, which is to have a sword and keep it sheathed, and to know that you are somebody that can do damage if need be, but in all humility, you're not going to bring that sword out. You're going to keep it sheathed unless somebody crosses you in the wrong way.
Mhm.
And so yeah, Mark, that's my long-winded intro of you.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome. Thank you for that intro. I'm humbled and honored to be on the podcast with you now. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course, man. So, I know that you were born on a military base. I think it was in Japan,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Correct?
Yokosuka,
Okay.
Japan.
And your father was a military man, and
Yep.
yeah, just kind of tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah. So my parents are Filipino immigrants, from the Philippines that came here. And my dad joined the U.S. Navy when he was actually in the Philippines. My grandfather was also in the Navy, and he was able to summon his family over from the Philippines to the United States. My parents met in San Francisco, got married, and had kids, and boom, I'm born. We end up moving to San Francisco, lived there for about 2 years, and then we moved to Vallejo, California, where I grew up. So a lot of songs were rapped, about Vallejo. And a lot of rappers came from Vallejo, and Vallejo has kind of a mystique about it. But yeah, I grew up there and I love Vallejo, and Vallejo is my city. I ended up, getting into wrestling through an incident in my life in eighth grade where I got jumped by five guys and ended up jumping on top of me and beating me up and kicking me in the back of the head, punching me in the back of the head. A friend of mine came up to me and said, "Hey man, you need to learn how to wrestle." I'm like, "No, man, you guys were tight leotards and touch each other in funny places, man. I'm cool with that." Right? He goes, "What? You think that's funny?" I said, "No, man, I'm gonna keep playing football and basketball. That's what I do." He goes, "I bet you I'd take you down in 10 seconds." I said, "Yeah, right, man. You're barely 100 pounds, 5 foot nothing. I'm 150 pounds, 5'6". There's no way you're going to take me down." Right. So, in probably like 2 seconds, probably shorter than that, he picks me up and slams me on my back, shoots a double leg on me. Right. And I'm like, dang, I want that. So, he ended up inviting me out to wrestling, and I ended up wrestling, and the rest is history. And so, end up becoming a two-time state champion, a high school national champion. I end up making a world team in high school twice. I take second at Fargo Junior Nationals, and getting a full ride scholarship to Oklahoma State University. So that's kind of how I grew up and how I got into the sport of wrestling, and kind of quick and dirty version of it. There's a lot of things I learned through the sport and made me a lot tougher and a better person. So
Yeah. That is a quick and dirty version of it. I was talking with for my episode that's about to come out soon. It's with Tyler Bray. He he has spina bifida. He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt,
yeah,
and he was a wrestler in high school.
yeah,
And so he's obviously talented in the world of jujitsu, but he was kind of talking about like wrestling separates the hobbyist from the crazy. And
yeah,
he's like you don't go into the level of collegiate wrestling unless you are hardcore and you're ready to put in that work. Like unless you are so extreme into the hardcore and your obsession is around wrestling, you don't even get into the collegiate ranks, let alone be a national champion and all these sorts of things.
yeah,
And he's like, I'm not going to be a gold medalist, so why even try?
yeah,
Like because unless you're obsessed with going after gold, then don't even go at that level.
yeah,
So
yeah,
having him kind of help explain that really even, because I think it's roughly 7% of all athletes who are transitioning from high school to college. It's like 7% of the best athletes in the world will go into college on some level, even like the JUCO level, right?
yeah.
Like it's only 7% of the top athletes. And so I was telling him, I imagine with wrestling, it's got to be way less than 7%. It's got to be to go into wrestling at the college level. You're talking about the top of the top in the country. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty incredible. You just kind of skipped over that a little bit, those successes you had in wrestling, but yeah, that's a lot of work you put in that.
yeah. I remember getting into it, and I didn't have an early start either. I started when I was 13, so it's like late start. And I remember getting beat by this guy named Joey Hart from Nevada Union. I remember going against him, and I was a 152 pounder my freshman year, and wrestling him, I was like, man, this guy's good, and I wasn't even ranked or anything. And then I ended up losing to him and wrestling another guy by the name of Andy Hunt, and he was from Ponderosa, and he was super good too. So I was like, dang, barely losing those guys, and then those guys go to state, and I'm left at home. But those guys went on to state and ended up placing third and fourth in the state from my section. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what? Man, I couldn't go to state because of those guys. So Anyways, that very same year, I tried out for a world team and made a world team in the summer. Trained really hard. I was like training every day. I just remember like working out, and I'm like going with, in the beginning, I was going with all the freshmen, and coach noticed I was getting better rapidly. And so he put me with the juniors and the seniors. And so I started going with the juniors and seniors, getting my butt whooped, but I was trying my best. I was like, whatever the coach taught, I was just trying to do it as best as I could. And if I didn't get it, I was like, I kept trying to do it. Like we talked about resilience, right? If it didn't happen the first time, I'm gonna try to get it the second, third, fourth, and fifth time. I'm gonna keep trying to do it till I get it. Then I just quickly noticed, like, I was, coach, like, why am I not getting this? He's like, well, your head's not up, your trail leg's not up, you're not turning the corner, you're not doing any of these things that help you finish that takedown. So I just became a guy that kept asking questions, and then because of the knowledge I end up getting from those, I end up doing pretty well at that. And so I just kept asking questions, and all the positions I got bad that I didn't score in, and I ended up getting better rapidly. And then after my sophomore year, my second year wrestling, I ended up winning state because I ended up like focusing on the things I needed to focus on. Right. So everyone, I mean, it's like the things that you want to do, people have already done. You don't have to recreate the wheel. So,
Mm.
so if you seek out the answers to people that have done it, they're going to give you wisdom and knowledge that you don't know. And so that right there is the key to success in anything, right?
Yeah.
You know, find out people who have done it, learn from them, and do it yourself. And if you didn't do it right, fix the things you did wrong and make it right. So
Yeah, it's such a good lesson, man. There's two parts to it. One is mentorship. Like mentorship is interesting because it transitions naturally as we develop. So the high school coach or that version of what that mentor would be changes eventually and becomes maybe the college coach or something like that. But
yeah,
nonetheless, there's a mentor. And then what you did that's very important was you allowed what probably came naturally through the mats, which was to be humble enough to ask questions. Like you allowed the humility to take place enough to say, man, why, like, I want to get this, I'm trying hard to get this, coach, what am I missing? Like,
yeah,
like you can have the mentorship there, but if you're not asking questions, then what's the point of the mentorship, the mentor, other than just to kind of look at them from afar and admire them?
yeah.
What else is there?
That's
Yeah.
true. And the mentor can actually teach you the things you need to learn, which is great. But then when you actually try
Mhm.
to execute the things that he's teaching you or she's teaching you, and you're not able to do them, that's where you need to find out what you're doing wrong, right? So
Mm.
a lot of
Yeah.
people skip that step. A lot of people overlook that. You did get taught by your mentor, or your teacher, or your coach, but doesn't mean you've learned what they taught you. So you got to go through a series of you actually doing it to finally execute what they've taught you. Correct? So there's a process,
Sure.
right? There's a process there. You're not just going to
Yeah.
automatically absorb everything that they're teaching you. Right? It's just not going to happen. Life is not like
Mhm.
that. I mean, that's why Jesus
Yeah.
had 12 disciples, and they were around him 24/7. He taught them a lot of things, but yet they didn't learn them until they had to go through the things that he was teaching them. And Peter, I can identify with Peter. That's who I am. And Peter, he's
Mhm.
stubborn. He loves fiercely. He does things just because he strongly believes. So,
Mhm.
Peter would go out, and I mean, he loved Jesus so much he chopped the soldier's ear off because he was so
Mhm.
passionate. And then Jesus was like, "Hey, do you love me?" Peter says, "Yes, I love you." Right? He goes, "Why are you asking me this question?" "Well, shepherd my sheep." Right? He's like, "Do you love me?" And he's like, yeah, why do you keep asking me, do you love me? And then he,
Yeah.
on and tells him, more. And Peter's like, oh, I get what you're saying to me now, So those are the things that, with your mentor, you actually have to ask questions. It's going to take a while to process it. People want things now. We live in a world where we have devices that if we want to text somebody and give them information, it's like very fast and at our fingertips. But when it comes to skill acquisition, when it comes to character, when it comes to your marriage, when it comes to being a father, when it comes to being a great son, all the many roles you play in your life. And if you want to be great on them, it's going to take time. There's going to be many mistakes,
Hmm.
but you have to roll with it. You have to learn by it. You have to continuously be resilient, just like this podcast, what we've been doing. It didn't work the first time, so we're trying the second time. If it cuts out, maybe we'll
Yeah.
try a third time
Yeah.
or fourth time. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's going well right now, so we'll roll with it. So, but
Yeah.
but man, that's life, man. Like, you fail, man. So what? Like, keep going. It'll work out if you keep trying to put your best foot forward and learn from people that have done it before and ask many questions. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that with Peter and mentorship like that before, and the way you just presented it, because maybe the last lesson that Jesus taught him was during his arrest. He said, For 3 times you're going to deny me." He foretold it, right? And
When
every
the
time,
rooster crows,
Peter keeps doing it, keeps doing it, and keeps doing it. And finally, the third time, he's like, "Well, dang it, man. Like, why do I keep screwing up? Dang
yeah,
it."
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
I love Peter and I love who he is. And I mean, it's kind of like how I am, man. I do the same things,
Yeah.
but man, I want to be a man of God. I want to be a man that has character. I want to be a man that shepherds God's sheep. I want to be a man that loves his wife, loves his children. I want to be a man that is an example to everybody that he comes into contact with, right?
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's good. So let's kind of go back into the origin story a little bit
Yep.
here, Mark. So you mentioned you're bullied. That leads you into wrestling. And then I think your dad kind of had an important role during this time to also mentor you and
Yeah.
kind of keep you accountable, right?
Yeah. So when James Wu-Tang came out to me, and so he's like, hey, you need to learn how to wrestle. And then I go home. I'm like, okay, I want to ask my dad if I can wrestle. And so I asked my dad, and I go, Dad, I want to wrestle. He looks around, and he goes, huh, you want to wrestle? Okay. You're going to wrestle the first day and the last day and every day in between. You're not going to quit. I go, okay, cool. Not knowing what I was even saying, right? And so I go to the first day of practice, and they were teaching us the double leg, the very same double leg that James hit on me to take me down. I'm like, ah, sick, man. I'm cool. I can't wait to do this back to James. So I do it, and I'm like, oh, man, this is cool. And about 30 minutes later, the coach goes, all right, guys, time to go live. I'm like, go live? What do you mean? I am alive. And then one of the guys goes, hey, no, we're going to try to take each other down 100%. I said, oh, got it. So I'm trying to not let you do it. He says, yeah. I'm like, okay. So the guy gets in on a double leg, and I'm like, okay, I don't remember coach teaching us how to defend this. So he blows the whistle. I'm like trying to sprawl or do something, but the guy picks me up and slams me, cross faces me. I end up getting a bloody nose and cross face me. I bite my lip or bleed from my lip. So I'm a bloody mess. My shirt's full of blood. I'm like, dude, this is not what I signed up for. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I still tried. I'm like, dude, wrestling is hard. I don't want to do this anymore. So next day, school ends. And I'm like, I'm gonna go home. So I didn't go to practice. My dad actually happens to be at home, and I'm like, oh dang it, why is my dad's car here? I'm like, shoot. So I walk into the house, and my dad looks at his watch. He goes, Mark, it's 3:30. You're supposed to be at practice. It started at 3 o'clock. I go, Dad, I don't want to wrestle anymore. He goes, what? What did I tell you? So he grabs me by the arm, drags me to the car, throws me into the car, drives me over to practice, pulls me out of the car, says, hey, Coach Minahan, Mark Munoz is here. See you later. And I didn't even have my wrestling clothes on, right? I had jeans and a t-shirt, right? And he goes, Mark Munoz is here. See you later. And Coach Minahan goes, Mark, what was that all about? And I go, Coach, I don't want to wrestle anymore. He goes, that's right. Go drill over there. I was like, oh, man. He didn't even give me a chance to even explain it. Even. So I ended up going and drill and ended up getting pretty good. And so my dad just said, hey, you are not going to stop. You're not going to quit. You're going to finish what you start. That's how my dad was. He taught me that principle. You start something, you finish it, So yeah, I grew up that way, and that was one incident that happened to me, and it totally changed my life and changed the trajectory of where I thought I was going to go. I thought I was going to be a pro football player, but that didn't happen, and end up wrestling and getting into MMA. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
because of that one incident.
Such a crazy thing, that one incident where you're like, your dad happens to be home for whatever reason. He happens to be home that day, and then you're held accountable to your promise. And that moment of him, like, he could have done the easy thing too as a dad. He could have, I think parents have done this a lot, where they just kind of roll their eyes and let their kid get away with it, because that's easier for them too.
Yeah.
But instead, he's like, no, get in the car. It takes you. And that one moment, man, it's such a life change.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can track back to all these blessings you've had in life and just see those start to dissolve and disappear if that moment doesn't happen.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to get into some of your MMA career. Like I said, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And you look at 14-6, and then we begin to give context to some of these people that you fought, and it's like, whoa, there's a reason why they called you the Filipino wrecking machine.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the two fights that stand out for me were the Damian Maia fight and the Chris Lieben fight? As a fan, like those two fights, man. So to give context for people who are not MMA fans or were not MMA fans at this time, Damian Maia was like the last true specialist, just pure jiu-jitsu excellence, ground game guy. His boxing started to take a step up toward the later parts of his career, but he was not known for his hands, to say the least. But if he got his hands on you, you were in danger. He was that vicious of a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So you had this fight with Damian Maia, and then you had the fight with Chris Lieben, where, well, I want you to say the result, but the fight with Chris Lieben, and to give context to the Chris Lieben fight, Chris Lieben had just beat probably the most scary man on the planet with Vanderlei Silva. Like, he had just, I think he knocked him out in the first round, maybe with 30 seconds or something, but he knocked out Vanderlei Silva, who, again, the axe murderer was his name. And go look up Vanderlei Silva highlights as you're on YouTube looking up Mark Munoz highlights. But this man was a maniac, and he just got knocked out by Chris Lieben, and then here goes Mark Munoz to fight. And I remember the tension of that fight was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the most violent thing ever. So if you don't mind, for the sake of my fandom, to talk about kind of your mindset going into these two different style fights, the Damian Maia fight and the Chris Lieben fight.
Yeah, so let's start off with Chris Lieben. Chris Lieben, did beat Vanderlei Silva, who got trained by by one of my coaches, Rafael Cordero, for King's MMA.
Who's a legend.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
legend. So he was, my coach. And I got coached by some other great guys too, Abel Nunez, and he was one of my striking coaches. And I had Hiron Gracie, Henrik Gracie as my jiu-jitsu coaches. I had many people that are around me. I had Casey Housestead that came into my gym, started coaching there. It was one of my coaches as well. And there's just been many people that have been around me. And so training for that fight with Chris Lieben in my gym, just to name a few guys, right? And so I had Michael Bisbane, I had Chael Sonnen, and I had a lot of the Black House guys, right? Anderson Silva, the Nogueira brothers, Big Dog, Little Dog. I had Lyoto, I had Junior Dos Santos, Rafael Dos Anjos. I had Brett Cooper, Emmanuel Newton, King Mo was Muhammad Lawal. He was a part of my gym too.
Yeah.
And all the females
Wow.
too. So I had Kylie Curran, I had Jessica Penne, I had Ashley Evans Smith. I had a lot of people part of my gym. I had a lot more guys in my gym, but that's just to name a few, So I got hit in the head for a living, so you gotta excuse me. But anyways, training for that fight for Chris Lieben, I trained 7-8 hours a day. I had work in the morning, and then afterwards I had pro practice, and then after that I had strength conditioning, and then I coached my wrestling club after that too. And so it was a tough camp, but I remember everyone said Chris Lieben has the chin of a brick wall, like you hit him, he ain't going nowhere. And I'm like, all right, we're gonna test this out. So going into that fight, I just knew, like, if it's not going my way on my feet, I'm gonna take him down and ground and pound him out. I just know I'm gonna do that, And I had some of the best training partners around in my gym, and so that gave me confidence, right? So Tom Watson, Tom Kong Watson was another guy. Brendan Shaw was another guy that was in my gym, and those guys I trained with. Oh, Pat Cummings was another guy that was in my gym, and see, these names are starting to come now, so but all these guys that were part of my gym gave me great looks, studied my opponent, and gave me great looks. They even stood southpaw if they were orthodox, because Chris Lee was southpaw, and they emulated Chris, imitated him to a T. And so I was really prepared going into that fight. And so I was strong. My weight cut was great. I just knew I was the better fighter. And so I remember hitting him super hard with the overhand right in the first round, and he didn't go anywhere. I'm like, dude, that knocks out everybody. I'm like, dang. And I could have sworn my hand hurt. Like, I broke my hand. I broke my right hand in that fight. But I was like, dang, I hit him so hard, he ain't going nowhere. He comes plodding back, right, lefts and rights, and like hits me a few times. I take him down, and I remember like hitting him like so hard, and dude, he didn't go out. I'm like, what is this guy made of? This dude is so tough, right? So I just continue to hit him, pound him, like hit him. He gets back up, and I'm like, dang. So I take him back down. I'm ground and pounding him again. When the second round ends, right, and I'm getting ready to come out, and the referee comes out and waves off the fight, right, and he quits on the stool. He said no mas. That's why I just got up and started screaming. But
so you got him to quit. You got him to quit in 2 rounds. I thought it was the end of the second is what it was.
And
it was the end of the second where he said
no more. Yeah, he's like no more.
Yeah.
So I ended up winning that fight, right? And so yeah, it was crazy, especially with Chris Lieben, with him being so tough, So so that happened, and then the Damian Maia fight, man. I just remembered someone telling me, I forget who it was. I just remember someone telling me, hey, don't take him down. The guy is going to be just amazing on the mat. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm going to take him down. I'm not afraid to go down on the mat. Like I go with some of the best jiu-jitsu fighters in the world and they have trouble submitting me, like if I don't take them down, I'm insulting them by not taking Maya down. So I, I,
Mm,
I've gone with Hidon Gracie. I've gone with the Nogueira brothers. I've gone with Fabricio Verdun. He was my training partner for
mm.
a very long time. I'm like,
So you're training. You're not only training with like high level black belts, but heavyweight high level black belts.
yes, yes, and some of the
Mm.
best in the world in jujitsu. So I'm just like, I'm gonna take this dude down, and good luck submitting me. He actually caught me with an overhand left that kind of staggered me a little bit.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it shocked everybody.
I
It
was
was
like,
like,
oh my
what
gosh.
just happened?
Yeah, I was like, what's wrong with my legs? So I kind of like ran around for a little bit just to try to get my legs back, but then I'm like, oh, I'm good. So then I get back in there and I start like peppering him up and taking him down and getting on top. And it was much of that, but it was a three round fight, and I came away with a unanimous decision victory. So I invite anybody that is watching this podcast to watch that fight, man. I feel it was one of my more entertaining fights.
I was so frustrated with you in that fight because you were going down with them. I was
Yeah,
like, don't do it. What are you doing?
yeah,
Don't do it. Like I was just so terrified that he would snatch up an ankle, he would pull
yeah,
you down, like he would grab something and then get you down. But the way you played it was like the wrestling was just so superb
yeah,
that like he couldn't he like the jujitsu couldn't outbeat your wrestling in jujitsu,
yeah,
right? Like it was just you were too heavy for him, you're too strong for him, you're pulling out of things when he tried. Yeah, so it was
yeah.
that. But yeah, I was on pins and needles. That fight, I'm like frustrated. Like, stop going down with him. Make him stand up. Make him stand up.
That's what my
Yeah.
corner was saying. My corner was telling me the same thing. And I'm like, man, they don't know what they're talking about. I just take him back down again and jump on top of him, start ground and pounding him. But
Yeah.
man, I remember him trying to like get triangles and me slipping out of it. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't take him down. I remember there was a time in the fight, if you were to watch that fight, he actually takes my back and crucifixes me. Like has my
Mm.
arm, have both arms like this, like, and I had my arms like, you know, occupied. He had my arm here with
Yeah.
his arms and had this other arm hooked with his legs. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like he's gonna submit me here. I just remember thinking that. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Probably not, and I kind of took my body down and then got my head out and got my arm out. I'm like, no, he's not, you know. And so
Yeah.
then we're getting back up and just proceed to punch him in the face a little bit more. But yeah, but it was there was a time he took my back in the fight, man. I was kind of worried a little bit because usually when Daniel Maya gets positions like that, it's over, you know. So
Yeah. He's a backpack.
oh,
He's a backpack. He's
he's a
yeah.
leech. He's a leech, and
Yeah.
he won't come off of you, you know. So I remember him taking my back like that. I'm like, oh no, all right, here's the training. The training. What do I need to do here? Let's peel him off. Let's peel him off. So my training with Hidon Gracie and Henry Gracie and Fabricio Verdun and all those guys and Minotauro and Minotauro Nogueira, Big Nog and Little Nog, those guys really, really helped me a lot, man. So
Yeah, that's incredible. That level of training that you had, that's incredible. All that
yeah,
and all that talent in one space. That's a good gym.
yeah,
That's a good training gym.
yeah.
I guess let me ask it this way. Historically, what was your route to get into MMA from wrestling?
Yeah. I had no plans on being a mixed martial artist. So I wrestled at Oklahoma State, the winningest wrestling program in collegiate history. Just want to put that out there, you know. Cowboy wrestling is the best dynasty when it comes to collegiate wrestling. But anyways,
Where does your son wrestle?
I know he wrestles at Oregon State, but
Oh, what happened?
I know. But he wrestles for Chris Pendleton, who was my teammate, and I coached for for 2 years at Oklahoma State, and he babysat my son, and so Barry already had a connection with him. So trust me, my wife and I wanted him to go to Oklahoma State, but it's my son's decision. He's paving his own way. He's one of the top wrestlers in the country, and he's looking to break his daddy's records.
Well, I took you off the point that you were making. So you're talking about getting into MMA.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I wasn't even thinking about getting into MMA, and then I end up accepting a job at UC Davis, where Lenny Zaleski was the head coach and I was the head assistant wrestling coach, right? And so when I went there, I met this guy by the name of Uriah Faber. Uriah Faber was just getting into the sport called MMA, and at that time, I'm like, "What is MMA?" He goes, "Oh, it's UFC. You ever seen UFC?" I go, "Oh yeah, that the cage fighting dudes, that just there's a fight in the cage where there's like a jiu-jitsu guy that fights a wrestler and a karate guy that fights a grappler." Like, he goes, "Yeah, that kind of stuff." I said, "You're doing that, dude?" He goes, "Yeah, man, dude, I just made $200 in 5 minutes." I go, "Dang, that's cool, man. That's your Uriah Faber, right?" And he goes, "Hey, man, you should come out and help corner me." I go, "Yeah, man." So I cornered him his second, and third, and like his first fights, right? And so I get there, I'm like, so he fights at this Indian reservation, and there's like stray dogs are going around everywhere. There's like chickens and like like the mats are on dirt. It's like, dude, this is like raunchy, dude. This is bad. And Uriah gets in there, knocks the guy out in like 30 seconds. He goes, "Bro, dude, I just made $500 in 30 seconds." Like, dude, that's crazy. And obviously, Uriah ended up opening up a gym called Ultimate Fitness. And so had a team called Team Alpha Male and was a part of that team. And Uriah is a special guy in my heart, man. He believed in me, and he gave me free training at his gym, and he hooked it up for me, man. Like, Uriah, dude, I love that guy. Love him with all my heart. And he's a brother to me, and he's an amazing businessman. Very smart and bright, very relatable, relational type guy. I mean, yeah, saying like, he's a man of character. The dude is awesome. And so he got me into it. He's like, "Bro, you need to fight." I'm like, "Nah, homie, I'm good. I got a wife and 3 kids, one on the way, man. Like, I don't have time. I'm getting my master's. I'm teaching and coaching." I'm like, "Bro, I have no time." He goes, "Bro, you can make a lot of money in this." I'm like, "I don't know about that, man." Yeah.
Especially at that time.
Yeah. I'm like, "Dude, you're only making like $500, dude. That doesn't even pay my rent." So anyways, he brings out like the who's who of the UFC at the time. Randy Couture's there, Brandon Vera, Quinn Rampage Jackson, Tito Ortiz, Frank Trigg, Scott Smith, James Irvin, like the who's who, right, of the UFC. And we trained at Sac City College, right? And so these guys are training there. And I'm like, dude, these guys are like the cream of the crop. Like, what the heck, right? And then Uriah, I was training at his gym for a little bit. We're drilling some combinations to takedowns, and we drill some escapes and stuff like that. I'm actually teaching the wrestling portion of the practice, right? So I teach like the clinch stuff, inside trips and all that stuff, and double leg takedowns. And Uriah comes in and goes, "All right, guys, it's time to spar." And I'm like, "Spar? What, spar these dudes? I don't know about that." So like I'm fading away in the shadows, right? Like, where's my popcorn and my soda, man? Because I want to watch this sparring. It's gonna be crazy, right? So So Uriah comes around the corner with a pair of gloves, pair of shin guards, and a headgear. He goes, "Hey, bro, put this on." I go, "Heck no, I'm not gonna spar these dudes. Like these dudes are like champions. Like I'm just getting started, dude. Like he's like, bro, you'll be fine. Double jab, double leg. You'll take him down. You'll be good, right?" And so there was this corner where it was like padded walls. It was kind of like a caged area, and everyone gets a party. And Randy Couture goes in that area, and he doesn't have a partner. And I'm like, dude, Randy doesn't have a partner, and I don't have a partner.
Yeah, no wonder why nobody's partnering up with Randy Couture, the
Yeah,
champion of the
he's
UFC.
yeah, he's the reigning champ, reigning and defending champion, fighting Tim Sylvia next, right? And so I'm like, uh, why is anybody with Randy and I don't have a partner? Dude, this is crazy. So anyway, Uriah's like, "Hey man, just double jab, double leg, you'll be fine, bro." I'm like, "I don't know, dude." He goes, "Dude, you'll be fine." And I'm like, your sympathetic nervous system is responsible for two things, right? Fight or flight, right? Well, I didn't have any wings to fly out of that place. So I'm like, all right, it's time to fight. It's either going to be him or me, right? So I'm like, all right, we're sparring. So I'm about to knock this dude out, right? So I'm thinking that in my head. So I'm like, all right. Uriah's like, double jab. He's coaching me in the corner. I'm like, double jabbing. And then Randy's like parrying and slipping his head and like inside leg kicks me and punches me. And I'm like, dude, this dude like is gonna knock me out. What the heck, So, anyways, he like clinches me, and I'm like, oh, sweet. So I'm like, and he's he wrestled at Oklahoma State. He's a Greco national champion. Like the dude is really good at wrestling.
He almost went to the Olympics, right? Like
Yeah,
he was an Olympic
yeah,
backup,
yeah,
something,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The dude was amazing at wrestling. So, anyways, he clinches me up, starts dirty boxing me. I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like, so I grab his legs. I grab his single leg and I'm taking him down. I'm like, oh my gosh. I just ended up taking Randy Couture down. I couldn't believe it. And then Uriah's like, ground and pound. I'm like, trying to rain punches from the heavens, right? Like, and people talk about my Donkey Kong punches, right? And so I was like, boom, boom, boom. And then Randy looks up. He goes, hey, hey, hey. We don't try to knock each other out in practice, Munoz. I go, oh. I was like, oh, my bad. He goes, 20% on the punches, and then we can go 100 on the grappling. I'm like, oh, my bad, dude. I'm so sorry. So anyways, so I'm like just trying to pepper him. He gets an underhook, takes my back, and I'm like, oh, shoot, he's got my back. So I stand up, and Matt returns me, and I'm like, oh, dang it. And so I end up getting out and scrambling and shooting on him. I mean, I just remember like it being like a dogfight, like just scrambling the whole time. And after the practice, Uriah like slaps me in the chest. He goes, see, I told you, bro, you're going to be good, right? And I go, huh. And then Randy sits me down. He goes, hey, you really need to consider doing mixed martial arts. You're a natural. I said, no. I said, wait, you're the natural. I said, I can't take
Yeah, he's the natural.
You're the
Literally.
natural. So anyways, I end up going home and asking my wife, I'm like, hey, what do you think about MMA? She goes, what's that? I said, UFC. She goes, what? You want to do that? And I go, yeah, I think I'll be pretty good. She goes, all right, don't expect me to go to your fights. And so I ended up getting into it, and man, just storm onto the scene. And then 10 months later, I was in the UFC. It's crazy. But
Yeah.
it was my management company, Uriah's Management, MMA Inc., and Mike Roberts and Jeff Meyer. They really helped me out big time. I'm indebted to them, man. They took care of me, and they're still good friends of mine till this day. So yeah.
That's an incredible first beginnings. Like,
Yeah.
because at the time, contextually, you don't know that Uriah Faber is going to be one of the best 145, 135 pound fighters, in history or whatever. You don't know that yet.
Yeah.
And also he's your friend, right? So you would expect your friend to kind of say, yeah, you can do that, to encourage you.
Yeah.
But to have then Randy Couture, who is, and at that time that you're describing, he's a living legend. He's doing incredible things. He's beating Tim Sylvia and just doing incredible things. So
Crazy.
to get his his pat on the back to say, you got to do this. Now
Yeah.
that's a stamp of approval right there. That's
For
incredible.
sure. Yeah, it was awesome when Randy was an Oklahoma State Cowboy as well, wrestled for Oklahoma State. Yeah, he's definitely a role model of mine. Look up to that guy for sure.
So you guys both have a after career similarity happening now, because I'm seeing on your Instagram you got some acting chops apparently now. So Randy went on and did some acting. His most notable role was probably in The Expendables and working with Sylvester Stallone. And now you're working with a legend with Danny Trio.
Yeah.
So you recently were in a movie with him, right? And so you want to talk about that experience?
Yeah, so I got casted to a movie called Lumpia with a Vengeance, and lumpia is a Filipino egg roll. My character weaponizes lumpia, so like Batman has like different devices for different things. I have lumpia that explodes. I have lumpia that like just knocks you out. I have lumpia nunchucks. I have lumpia everything, right? And so they call me the lumpia man. So I got bullied when I was little, and later on, I end up doing martial arts, and I end up, learning about a drug cartel, and they're using lumpia as drugs and stuff like that, and so I end up taking those guys out. But anyways, that's kind of the plot in the story, and it's an action comedy, obviously, and I take out
Yeah,
I take out the bad guys with lumpia. So I have a
it's
freezer. I
hilarious.
have a freezer on one hip, then I have a deep fryer and lumpia launcher on the other hip, right? So I transfer the lumpia to the deep fryer and the launcher. It launches up. I catch it and I throw it, right? And so it just all depends on what type of lumpia I want to take. I want to use, whether it explodes, whether it like ties them up or whatever. So I just throw this lumpia and subdue all my adversaries with it. So, but
That's
but then
hilarious.
I use my
So
martial arts too. So it's a action comedy, man. You should watch it. It's pretty funny.
very
Yeah.
cool. Did you get to work with Danny Trio, and
Yeah.
what was he like, if you
So
did?
so our first scene together. This is crazy. He was Taquita boy and I was Nubia man, right? And so we end up. This is our first scene. I end up meeting him in the green room, and we're getting ready and stuff. And he's super awesome, man. He's got businesses like Treos Tacos or whatever. I mean, he's got restaurants and all these things, and he was
Mm.
talking about it, and just smiling and laughing. And I'm like, dude, I'm not used to seeing you smile and laugh. Like, it's crazy. I'm used to him being the bad guy and just mugging the whole time. But just an awesome guy, right? And so, anyways, our first scene together, he had to throw the keto and I had to throw the Olympia, right? And CGI would have just took it and had it explode, right? Anyways, they're like, hey, Danny, you throw the taquito, Mark, you throw the lumpia. Our very first scene, right? So he throws the taquito, I throw the lumpia, and it hits. Like it hits each other, right? And he's literally like 100 feet away. I'm like, dude, if that's not an instant connection, Danny, like you need to have me in your movies, bro. Like, like that's a sign, you know. So, anyways, no, it was cool. It was cool watching him in action, man. He is just a consummate professional, right? Like it was really, really cool. Super cool.
So, what would you say was your biggest loss of your career, MMA career specifically, just to give context for the listener? So, you lost to Yushin Okami, who ended up fighting for the title. You lost to Chris Weidman. That was one of your probably more famous losses. And Chris Weidman, if anybody knows MMA, they know Chris Weidman. He became the champion, beat Anderson Silva twice. Gegard Mousasi, who later on became the champion. I think he was Strikeforce champion, but also later on became champion at Bellator. So you didn't lose to no name guys except for one guy that was relatively no name, Ron
Juan
Conero.
Cornero. Juan Cornero.
Ron Conero, jiu-jitsu ace. Which loss would you say was your biggest, and why?
Oh man. Um I would have to say Chris Weidman, because
Mm.
I ended up accepting that fight on 6 weeks' notice.
Ah,
And I had to lose 35 pounds to make weight for that fight. In
wow.
my mind, I'm like, dude, this dude's going to try to wrestle me. I'm going to whoop this dude, right? And so I just thought in my mind, I just got to make weight. And I had the hardest time making weight. So it was the worst weight cut ever. But still in my mind, I'm like, dude, I'm still going to beat this guy. I'm still going to whoop on him. Anyways, I'm in the fight. My feet were just like in cement. Anyways, I fake a shot. I go for overhead right. And he just blocks and throws an elbow. And he gives me this gash right here. Knocks me out with an elbow. And yeah, that was probably the worst I've ever gotten knocked out. So yeah, that was the one, and he ended up, fighting Anderson Silva and winning the title. So I just look back thinking, man, if I didn't accept that fight on 6 week notice, man, like I think I would have, beat that guy. And then, my loss against Gegard Mousasi, I tore my MCL in that fight. Went to go pick him up. I picked him up. I felt my knee like pop, and I put him down, and then like I couldn't push off my knee. I was like, what the heck? And then he took my back and choked me. I was like, golly. And I limped out of that ring, and I'm like thinking, I could beat that guy. The heck, So just stuff like that, man. I mean, it still hurts me till this day. When I was home, I wasn't home. I was traveling all over around the world, doing a bunch of things, have a wife and 4 kids, business and raid training center, running my own wrestling camps, and being a mixed martial artist, doing some motivational speaking engagements, right? And so doing all this, but I wasn't being a good dad. I wasn't being a good husband because I wasn't ever home. And then when I was home, I was checking my email, texting people back, wasn't spending time, wasn't being present. I remember arguing with my wife, and she's like, when you're home, you're never home. And I married you because you're an amazing man, this and that. But just of late, you've just been so consumed with your career. And I'm like, what do you want from me? Like, I'm providing for this family. And so I was just blinded. My son comes up to me and he goes, Dad, I want to quit soccer and baseball, which he was really good at. And he goes, Dad, I want to wrestle and I want you to coach me. And now it's a straw that broke the camel's back, I mean, God was just saying, hey, what are you doing? You got to seek me first and my kingdom and my righteousness, and everything else will be added unto you. It was just like, I just started crying when my son said that. And so I was like, I'm done. I'm done. And I was on the verge of becoming a world champ. I was ranked top 3 in the world. And I was like knocking on the door. But when my son said that, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. And I'm going to focus on my family, focus on my relationship with God. And so, yeah. So that's how I retired. And I'm like, regardless of the wins and losses, like, I'm going to give this up to God. And, he's got the plans. He knows the plans that he has for me. Plans to prosper me, not to harm me, to give me a future and a hope. And my cup is overflowing, and his mercy and his grace is new every morning. And I just can't. I mean, my blessings are just, they outnumber the sand. And my son, I mean, he's one of the best kids in the nation. And my daughter at the time was sneaking out of the house, taking the car. She was rebelling, my oldest daughter. And now she's a part of this organization called YWAM, Youth with a Mission. She's in Kona, ministering to people, and is a missionary, and is living a life of faith, hope, and love, right? So it's just amazing when you put Christ first. It's not to say that your life is going to be all like, flowers and rainbows. It's not, but you definitely have a greater perspective of things, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I do have God and I do have a loving wife. I do have kids that love Jesus and kids that want to live in faith. And yeah, so this is how I'm living my life now.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
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 You said in your retirement speech, right before leaving your gloves in the cage, you said, "I know I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish in the cage."
Yeah.
Looking back at it in hindsight, do you still feel that way?
In hindsight, no, I
Mm.
don't. Although, yeah, it'd be nice to have that BOC belt around my waist. And I feel like I'm good enough to do that. Um, but that's not in the cards for me. That's not what God's plan was for me. I just see the inner workings of how God just orchestrated all this in my life. And I have all this to look forward to, with my kids and my family and the businesses I have, that I can share my knowledge and do all this stuff. And, I have this website called The Wrestling World where I have all the knowledge that I have in my brain, and I can show them through technique, through a screen. And if they want to learn from me, they can
Mhm.
email me and say, hey, I would like to have a private session with you through FaceTime or through Zoom, whatever, So
Yeah.
I'm able to impact people and do those things, and it's all part of God's plan, man. Like I'm fortunate to be able to live the life I'm living, and I count my blessings every day, man.
I think, well, first I'll say this in regards to a wrestling room.
Yeah, the restroom.
Yeah, with that, and I follow you on Instagram, and like I have several of you with your son teaching techniques, those videos saved, and like I work on them with my son, some of the trips and the different things.
Yeah,
And yeah, I put those and I save those because I want to work on them with my son.
there's gonna
Without
be
the
more
wrestling
coming
room
out,
mats
man.
at
There's
home,
gonna
but
be more coming out. So
yeah, so that stuff's awesome. It's great. I think what you're doing there with the wrestling room, and then you do private sessions and all that sort of stuff too, which is really cool. You're still giving out to the sport of wrestling, to the sport of MMA, and that's really cool. One last question. So, to finish that quote that you said in your retirement speech, you said, "You might be hit by unforeseen things, but your life doesn't stop there. You get back up and you keep competing to the best of your ability." Can you explain what you
yeah,
meant by that statement?
yeah. There's things that happen in your life. There's things that happen inside the cage. There's things that happen in training, but you can't control those things. So I always say control the controllables. You can control your effort, you can control your attitude, you can control your thoughts, and you need to control those things. Because if you try to control the things you can't control, you're just going to have anxiety and depression and all these things. And so the reason why I said that was because unforeseen things are going to happen, but it's how you react that's going to elevate you to a place where others wish they were. Well, Jeremiah 29:11 says, find all the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Right? Plans to prosper, not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. Philippians 4:6-7 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Supplication is praying for others, and you got to be thankful. Let your requests be known to God, and then the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus, right? So regardless of what happens in your life, you might be hit by unforeseen things. You might get a car accident. Just know, like, you can control your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, and you just keep competing. You just keep getting up, keep doing the best that you can, and things are going to work out the way they're supposed to work out, right?
Mhm.
So, regardless if you're an MMA or you're a mechanic or you're a doctor, lawyer, a librarian, whatever, do it the best that you can. And those are the giftings that God has given you. Use your skills, use your gift, use your abilities, and it'll work out, man. Give glory to God. And for me personally, if I didn't have that, I'd definitely be going in the wrong direction. But thankful that I found Jesus earlier in my life, and living my life by faith, hope and love, and reading the scripture every day and trying to be a man of faith. That's how I want to live my life. And so, and it says preach the gospel always, but use words if you must, right? Mother Teresa said that. So, for me, like, I'm going to treat people how I want to be treated. Use the golden rule. And that's in Matthew 6. So for me, like, I'm thankful for this podcast. I'm thankful that you even wanted to interview me. I'm thankful that I have the experiences I have, and I'm thankful that I can share them with people that want to learn from me. So I go on military tours, going with our military men and women, traveling all around the world, been to all 7 continents. So I'm just blessed, man. I'm blessed to do what I do, and blessed to live the life that I'm living, and I'm blessed that people still want to interview me and talk to me. So yeah. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah. Speaking of blessings, man, I'm extremely blessed by this interview and the opportunity to be able to interview you. There's no way I would have thought when I'm sitting there watching you give your retirement speech live that I would have thought, yeah, I'm going to be interviewing Mark Munoz someday, and he's going to be preaching wisdom to me and dropping knowledge to me about resilience. There's no way I would have thought that would have been in the cards for me in my future. So yeah, this has been an honor for someone like you to be able to come on a tiny podcast like this and to be able to talk about resilience and to be able to talk about and to infuse how faith in God helps you in that. So I thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Patina'd Podcast. There are other shows that emphasize resilience, but my intent is to normalize personal development through embracing challenge by interviewing the common man and woman, the person that you and I can relate to. If you are someone who wants to soak up the insights of normal people doing extraordinary things, please subscribe. If you know somebody who is overwhelmed by fear and complacency, please share this podcast with them. I'm your host, Kenny Hill, and I run a private practice near Sacramento, California called Recovery Hill. My website is in the description tab along with my social media links. The intro music was Two in the Back, performed by Sunday at Slams on Blue Dot Sessions.